So, hello everybody and good morning. For about 3.5 years now, I've had the privilege of leading this great laboratory, which carries out world-leading research over a wide range of science and technology. And the thing that I've been saying this year is that the nation's making a big investment in our science. And in our future, and entrusting us to make the most impact with that investment. We are getting a record number of projects and a record level of funding for the laboratory. So we have an ambitious plan to build the Berkeley lab for the future, and that's what this is about and what our annual lab plan is about. With over $1 billion of projects, user facility upgrades, modern buildings, and renewed infrastructure. So we're also, it's not just buildings, we're focusing on developing our people so that from the time early in their career to become leaders of the laboratory. So our goal is to have renewed the laboratory so that in 2031, which will be the 100th anniversary of this laboratory, we'll have a laboratory that's ready for another long run into the future. So that's sort of the theme of what I'm talking about today. And it's also the way that I talked about it at the annual lab plan meeting in the Office of Science. So I always use some version of this slide to say what we provide the nation, but the important thing is great science first. That's mostly what we're here to provide. We deliver scientific solutions addressing national priorities, for which we get National Medals of Science and Technology, 16, and 34 Lawrence Awards. That's the Lawrence Award there. Mina Bissell got both of those awards. And discovery science, for which we've gotten 13 Nobel Prizes here, and actually the Breakthrough Prize. So that's Convolute from the Diabray neutrino experiment. And we also have besides that, we have unique scientific capabilities and facilities, our user facilities, advanced instrumentation, manage large research teams, important technologies, and something that I emphasized again more this year, a diverse group of highly trained and creative and committed scientists and engineers. This laboratory actually has a special responsibility in that part of training that future. People tend to talk about graduate programs in universities as training the scientists of the future, but a large fraction of the postdocs in physics, for example, are at national laboratories. We have a very important role. And this lab does more of its work with postdocs than the other lab. So the Department of Energy Office of Science gave us an A grade on mission accomplishment for the second year in a row. So they're actually judging us as delivering on these. It was also true, many of these slides are from the annual lab plan I gave. This was the first time that Chris Fall has been confirmed as the head of the Office of Science. So he was there this year. So that was the first time I got the chance to talk to him directly. And he's visiting the lab today and tomorrow. So we'll be actually around showing him as just after we get out of this, he'll be showing up here and we'll start on. So I wanted to just take a minute to talk about science highlights, since that is what we do. And the problem is I could go on for half an hour on science highlights, but that wouldn't be a good use of our time. So I'm really just pulling a few out of our science news stories. We had set a new record for laser plasma acceleration, the Bella team and ATAP division of 7.8 GeV. We have Chelsea Preble and Tom Kirchstedter's group built and deployed 100 black carbon sensors to measure the air quality in West Oakland neighborhoods. It was a very interesting story. And for all the background of this, I refer you to Elements, where you can find all these, of course. Arunima Singh and Chris and Person's group used the materials project to screen 69,000 materials to get a group of photocathodes potential materials for better conversion of CO2. The Yano Yachandra lab in MBIB and colleagues captured an X-ray movie of the molecules active in photosynthesis with unprecedented detail, and you actually see them rotating there, showing that. Christina Petricola, Michael Wayner, and colleagues used simulations running on Cori to study how hurricanes are strengthened by warmer temperatures. That actually got a lot of coverage. And Brett Helms' group at the Foundry actually got 2 top stories, 2 breakthroughs this year. Working with Tom Russell's group at UMass, they were able to print these magnetic liquid droplets, which gave this video that had 100,000 hits on YouTube. And also their work on open loop recyclable plastics, that is, plastics that actually are designed to be deconstructed easily at the end of the process. So this gives you this is just a sampling of the range of science that we cover here. And I think actually, and it's layers and layers deeper than that if we took the time to go through it. This is mostly what we're here to do. We're getting good support from especially the Department of Energy. This is our funding wheel, and as you know, the big picture is that the Office of Science sponsors about 72% of our research, very large programs for advanced scientific computing, biological and environmental research, basic energy sciences, energy and nuclear physics. Those are our core business, and the Office of Science is our owner. But we have another 16% from other DOE offices, especially energy efficiency, renewable energy. And then other federal agencies provide about $50 million, and non-federal sponsors another $50 million. Each are big pieces, and the non-federal are private industry, California, and foundations. One of the things that I also point out, we actually have 3 types of ways we do our research: user facilities, these large team science and large projects, and then focus and manage core research programs. Getting the balance of these is very important. If you don't want to have too much of one and not enough of the other, and this is something right now with this great building program the Office of Science is struggling with. How do you make sure that the research programs are strong enough while you're building all these projects that you don't lose the capability? And we're part of that too. And so that's something that we've been working a lot on, is in this period of great infrastructure building that we keep the support we need for the research. So that's an important element for us. These are our areas of research and the people who lead them, and we're the ones who are in steady conversation with the programs. But I also I take the opportunity to point out, we have our Berkeley Lab Advisory Board. Many of you have not seen this group, but this includes 4 former lab directors and 1 deputy lab director, a chairman of Intel, former presidents of the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institute, deputy secretary of energy, directors of large university institutes at Wisconsin, San Diego, deans of engineering at Harvard and Princeton. It's a pretty strong group, and they're pretty open in their advice for us. And we have very good conversations with them twice a year. One of the good things to do is when I call people to ask to sit on this, basically everybody I talk to says yes. And the reason even though these are very busy people, and they see that the impact of this laboratory is something that if they're going to do something outside, this is one they're willing to spend time on. And of course, we also advertise they get to work with all these other people. And so that's part of doing it. So I'm really proud of this group, and I think it's really an important part of how we shape our strategy. So great science mostly needs great scientists, and more important than, management in many ways. So we are extremely fortunate to be able to attract and retain great scientists. These are our new members of the National Academy of Sciences and Engineering and the American Academy and AAAS. And it's a wonderful mix of both faculty scientists and people who are running our programs here and full-time at the laboratory. And very few institutions in the world have this sort of strength. We have had 15 members elected to the National Academy of Sciences and 4 to the National Academy of Engineering in just the last 5 years. So this is a constant validation of the strength of our program. And we're also developing the leaders of the future. We have had 37 winners of the Early Career Research Program Award since 2010, and we're quite proud of that as well. These user facilities, if you ask people outside the laboratory system what they know about the laboratories, many of them, the user facilities are what they do know. They're certainly the entry point for a lot of people who work here who work with us. And the important message here now is that we are upgrading all of these user facilities in major ways, different ways for each one of them. But at the advanced light source, of course, and I'll talk about this, we have the ALS upgrade will provide an unprecedented coherent flux of soft X-rays for all of that science. I'll talk about that. The molecular foundry is actually going through a process of upgrades through a series of calls, both for quantum information science, for new instrumentation, along with the other nanoscale science research centers. At NERSC, we have our new NERSC 9 or Perlmutter facility is already in procurement at this point, and we're getting ready, clearing the deck, getting ready for that. ESNet, which is our network that we provide for the whole system, is going through its upgrade to ESNet 6, which is a complete change in the paradigm of how that network is being controlled. And Joint Genome Institute, which is our collaborative genome science program that has a very spreading impact on our biological research, of course, is about to occupy the Integrative Genomics building, which will be its new facility out across the street here. So this is a once in a long time opportunity to upgrade these facilities for the future. So we talk about strategic priorities, and and these are things that actually are sort of guide stars for the laboratory about what we're trying to do, and they evolve a little bit every year, but of course, priorities shouldn't change too quickly. These are, in this case, chemistry and material science with the upgraded advanced light source, and it involves also all of the energy science complex there and what it can do. Breakthrough science at the EXASCALE, and of course, that's computational and math research that connects with all of our lab science, as well as the user facilities, NERSC and ESNet. Our discovery science and fundamental physics, and they've had some great breakthroughs this year that I'll talk about in a minute, and finishing some projects. And then new capabilities in biological environmental science, which is Joint Genome Institute and JBay and the Agile Biofoundry and BioEpic, a broad array of programs that is the largest BER laboratory in the system. But our fifth priority that you're hearing more about is infrastructure renewal, including new research facilities, because this is actually both the greatest opportunity and the most complicated thing for us to manage is the amount of facilities work and infrastructure we're doing now. And you'll be seeing a lot of this in the months and years to come. So besides those priorities, then we have initiatives that we change to some extent, evolve on a year-to-year basis. And here are our lab-wide initiatives are things that have been LDRD, have been laboratory-directed R&D, but are now beyond that, but still very important and being supported well. Electron microscopy, microbes to biomes, biopic science, and quantum information systems. And I'll talk about those. And then the ones that are lab-wide LDRD initiatives, which are next generation microelectronics, genetically encoded composites, machine learning for science, solid state energy storage, which is a new one, water energy resilience, and early career LDRD track. Genetically encoded composites is also new this year. So this is our round that our 3% of our funding that we can dedicate to seeding new things. And the way we use that is to initiate new capabilities. Many of our leading facilities here were started with LDRD, reduce technical risk for our major projects so that we can be sure of their success, integrate across programs, things like machine learning for science that actually bridge across the laboratory. And then, and this is something that we've put special emphasis in the last few years, developing scientific leaders for the future. That is, that we're actually taking some part of these precious laboratory-directed R&D funds and investing it in the people in the early career scientists. And this is very important to our future, and I think we'll continue to do that. So for the strategic priorities, I'd like to just pick out sort of a piece of each one to give some example. And for the advanced light source upgrade is one of those. We have assembled a very strong project leadership team that is shown there. We have brought in half of that group in the last year, but we now have with Dave Robin and Robbie Lefwich-Van as project director and project manager, Elaine Demacia as beamline and optical lead, and Ken Chow, Christoph Steyer, and Daniela Leitner are the rest of the team. We just went through a director's review for an Office of Project Assessment review that's coming up. And they gave a terrific grade for the progress that's been made since our CD1 review last year. We have developed detailed plans for CD3A. That means to start procuring some of the equipment and getting ready to build the accumulator ring. And a lot of decisions were made, including beamline selection and beam energy and physics design of accumulator. And this team has grown from about 30 to about 85 people in the last year. While actually making this progress, it's really been dramatic. And I want to call out the role that the engineering division had in facilitating that. It's really been a team effort for the laboratory. We have, as we finish one building and the Bevatron lot, we actually are, which is IGB, we're getting ready for our next one, which is BioEpic. And we're just designing it to integrate research from molecular and genomics controlled scales to the regional and global scales. We've had are now getting into the detailed design of that and programming. It's going to be another really landmark building for this laboratory in a very visible spot. And things are moving very quickly on that right now, and we're looking forward to it. For exascale science, this is a lab-wide priority, but I want to most say that I think compared to any laboratory, we have more connections of high-performance computing to all the parts of sciences laboratory than I think anywhere. It includes genomics and chemistry and materials and subsurface science and the planet and the universe and carbon capture and manufacturing. This is, and you'll see that more and more the federal government, the DOE, the Office of Science is talking about AI in those terms. What are we doing with AI? Well, this is our part of what we can do here with AI that really has an impact on our science. And I think that this is one where we can be setting a pattern for most of the scientific complex in the US about how to make this work. We have about 150 projects on machine learning for science around the laboratory. Not, of course, all LDRD, mostly supported through other funds. And so I have, on fundamental physics, I have to say as my home discipline, how proud I am to have these two really complicated, difficult projects that are reaching, into various parts of installation stage and have gotten through enormous number of risks they've gotten through. The Lex Zeppelin, this is the time projection chamber that recently was assembled above ground at Leeds, South Dakota, that will hold 7 tons of liquid xenon for that dark matter search. It's gone into the first cryostat tank. It's going down below that, and it's got these fantastic arrays of photomultipliers, 2 on each side to view it all. That's ready to go down and will be installed very shortly. And then the dark energy spectroscopic instrument, which is even farther along, it's actually been the 8,900-pound 6 lens corrector already was installed at the top of the Mayall telescope. And this shows the first light image and some of these spectacular, and you can see online this and more glory. The Whirlpool Galaxy, they did not have a Hubble moment, which is that oops, where you look and you see not the spot you expect. It was the right size. That was a big accomplishment. And they now have these 5,000 fiber positioning robots, which will move all these fibers around into the right location with every exposure, all in place now. So they're actually going, they're almost going through their punch list, getting ready for commissioning now. This is really, so Michael Levy and his people work on that project have really have a lot to be proud of there. So, but let's back from the universe back to the practical realities of buildings. We need modern laboratories here. There had been some, actually the laboratory had fallen behind for reasons of federal budgets. So we're now in a period of building, and you see that this is sort of back from things that were started with ARA funding, with stimulus funding through more recent times, including demolition and cleanup, which for this laboratory is an important part of building our future and getting environmental management program to pay for those and to fund them and to be a partner. And so we have next bioepic coming and our seismic and safety modernization program, also known as the cafeteria. I mean, for those of you who want to know where that is, it's this thing that looks like it looks a little bit like a cruise ship from the right angle, but it'll have some wonderful views too. Those are actually in progress, and then some things that we're working on don't yet have them in the line for getting funding, but new buildings, both advanced materials discovery in the Old Town area and more building on the biocampus. So the takeaway here is through partnership with the Department of Energy, we are in the process of making a modern transformed future for Berkeley Lab in 2031 for our 100th anniversary. And our support from this from the department is very good. And that's closely tied to the fact that we're seen as doing great science. Those are intimately connected. That's why we get that vote of confidence. But managing it is really difficult. And so these are some of the projects, the infrastructure projects. These are not the science projects, but you can see we have the big buildings that I talked about, but there's also things like supply water and storm drain and utilities and all of these projects, and we're paying for them. It's $60 million out of institutional funds, an order of magnitude more out of science laboratory infrastructure. So that's, we're of course doing our part, but the really large, heavy lifting for this is the Science Laboratories Infrastructure Program. Managing this great opportunity is a real challenge. It's something we're gearing up to do. And all of us will be feeling the impact of all this work going on at this laboratory. That's something that we do have to be going through for us to be existing in the long term as a successful laboratory. But it's worth looking ahead at where we want to go. And on the one hand, we look at buildings, but on the other hand, there's just what is the scale of where our buildings are. This is a color-coded thing. Green's adequate, yellow's substandard, and red's inadequate. And all I can say is there's a lot more yellow and red than there is in green and where things are today, which is just to say that's where we start from. And if we're able to work through all this program with that great support from SLI, our goal is in 2030, it will look like this, where it's mostly green, few yellow, and things are red we'll get rid of. I mean, that's what that means. So this will transform the laboratory if we can do that. And so this is why we have to do it. It's expensive, but the government is ready to support that. It's hard work, and we need to do that. But this is central to the stewardship of this laboratory for its future. So we also have, every time I talk to buildings, I have to come back and talk about people because it's the other side of it. We have a strong operations leadership. A lot of these people are relatively new in their jobs, and it's a strong team that we've been putting in place. We're working, Michael Brandt and I are working to communicate that across research and operations, we are one laboratory, and this is the theme that we are developing. We're also actually, besides operation, I wanted to point out, we also have been reorganizing the research office, if you will, the Strategic Partnerships Office. Now it has Todd Prayat head, and the intellectual property office that will have a new head soon. We've also been reorganizing that as part of improving our management stewardship of the laboratory. So I should say how much better I feel with all those positions filled than I did, say, a year ago when I showed these, and these were all searches going on. So let me say a few things on the major initiatives. I'm going to pick out a few to give some examples of this. I mentioned the machine learning for science. This is in its third year of LDRD. And these, as I said, 150 projects overall, many of which have spun out of LDRD by now. But we have continuing LDRD and machine learning for science on chemistry, computational chemistry, and analysis of cryo-EM and X-ray tomography and large-scale structure of the universe and seismic data from dark fiber. The new projects are on some things where we're developing new territory, control of ultra-fast lasers on the one hand, and building controls for energy efficiency on the other, is actually using machine learning as a control feedback mechanism. Finally, if people haven't seen it, actually take a look at this machine ML for science.lbl.gov, that website, which shows all the things going on. It's actually pretty cool to see how much is going on. And another one that we've had a very large role in is the quantum information science. This initiative started 3 years ago with LDRD, but we already have DOE-funded programs across the lab, more than any other lab, in basic energy science and material science, and recapitalizing molecular foundry has been partly through this. In high energy physics, we have quantum sensing and simulation and control. Advanced scientific computing, we have quantum algorithms, but also the Advanced Quantum Testbed, which is the largest single project in the whole system that Irfan Siddiqui is leading, that we're getting ready to build here. In today's Washington Post, there's an article, and the article is titled something like, quantum science is coming and China's ahead of us, or something is the theme. And Chris Fall is quoted in that, talking about how the federal government and the DOE is responding to that. So that's very relevant for our visit today. And one thing that we're working very hard is how to best carry out the interest of the Department of Energy and the federal government in this area. There are some new quantum centers coming out that we're also going to be looking at that they're going to be. So this is very active, and this is one where our push early on to start organizing ourselves for this was very crucial, in the fact that we have such a large program in today and growing. And we also have the, just again, on a completely different area, Water Energy Resilience Research Institute, and there we led a consortium proposal for the AMO desalination hub. We're still waiting to hear how that came out, but we have people in a wide range of activities, and in many of these cases, it shows how even in these relatively applied areas, how much, why you have this at science laboratories, because we're leveraging both our scientists and our facilities to take advantage of these, and why we do so much applied energy work at what is fundamentally a science laboratory. And a new one that's just getting going now is on microelectronics, and this is something microelectronics is going through a revolution, like it or not. As John Shelf has talked about many times, we've been calling for this revolution. This revolution is coming for a long time, but it's actually here now, and the industry is actually realizing that they need some support and help from the federal government in how to navigate this. And even the semiconductor industry was calling for this year. So this is something where we're trying to operate from the scale of materials to transistors, devices, to architecture, to system. It's very difficult to do. It hasn't been done in sort of a generation. And we're working closely with both the basic science programs, OSCAR and Basic Energy Sciences, AMO for the more applied, and also actually are coordinating now with the DARPA program in this area, which is a really important partnership for us because DARPA that's the defense program for advanced research projects. They are essential to the federal role in microelectronics, so we're working with them on this. It's exciting. So I have talked about, for the last 18 months, the laboratory stewardship, our need to develop highest standards of research, leadership of people, and our stewardship of resources. A couple of things new this year. We were able to get a new paid parental leave policy going. I wish we could do more, but at least we're actually ahead in the University of California for doing this for all of our employees. And a skillful stewardship leadership training pilot, which is actually, it was directed at division department directors, a cohort that leadership training, but it was really suited to the exact issues we have here at the laboratory and how to deal with some of these complicated stewardship problems. But a central part of this has been our IDEA campaign, and I'm sure that none of you are not familiar that this is going on. I think we've done a really good job of making sure that this is communicated across the laboratory. It's been a joint effort of our IDEA team led by Lady Idos, which in her new position reporting directly to me, and the Strategic Communications Office have really been partners in talking about this and starting these conversations on the 4 elements of inclusion, diversity, equity, and accountability. Our goal is to have the most ambitious and effective program of any of leading research institution, and we'll be now making transition from this launch phase into discussions around the laboratory, around the divisions and facilities of the laboratory about how we actually can implement this and how to support you in doing that. We also, I talk about attracting and developing talent for the future, and I want to emphasize this is not just about scientists, but it's about all the important disciplines we have here at the laboratory. And we are in a tight labor market, and so getting people to work here and developing them is even more important for us. So we've developed some new tools. Our staff have used LinkedIn Learning for over 20,000 video courses, and we have hundreds of supervisors, 200 supervisors have benefited from our safe training for facility supervisors. The skillful stewardship program I talked about, we did a first round of that this year. The feedback was very positive, and we're making some tuning on that, and we'll make a second round for people who were not able to participate this time, and providing a 360-degree leadership assessment by an experienced contractor to many lab leaders. We're being a lot more conscious about how to give people the tools they have to be the stewards of the laboratory we need. And this is a conscious effort, and I think we've made some progress, and we've got some more progress to make. Another change we've had at the laboratory is on communications. When I came in, I realized that we did not have the tools we need to do communication strategically, and we've been building that out to its present status. I'm quite pleased with where we are. Importantly, we have in employee communications and management communications, we now have the tools to be able to reach people with messages in a way that we could not before. It's essential for developing a culture of stewardship at the laboratory to have everybody feel invested in that stewardship, that you have that ability to communicate about things like IDEA. And I realized that this is something we needed. I think we're making it to build a cohesive community across the laboratory. Meanwhile, we also, of course, for external communications, have the ability, for example, we had this YouTube video on magnetic droplets with over 100,000 views. Actually, that's actually a new capability too. And then there are also some things that we need to pay attention to that I want to take this opportunity to talk about. And the two areas of special attention this year are site security and safety. We are working through a corrective action plan, have been for last year, to improve our site security, new process for badging and for foreign visitors. You've been hearing about this. We've hired a new security operations manager, David Van Dam, who's been great, and he's been out talking to all of the areas to understand their security needs and how to improve that infrastructure and increase staff. Our top priorities are protecting people and protecting the government property here, both real and intellectual, and it's something that we will be working to take care of. We've also developed a generally strong safety culture, but are identifying gaps, and it's something we had a series of incidents lately that actually showed that. So it's time to have a sort of refresh of that. Safety is a central responsibility of all of our line managers who are responsible for seeing that everyone returns home at the end of the day in good shape. And we're working to make sure that integrated safety management is actually practiced every day in all of our range of laboratories. And in planning unconventional work, we need to make sure decisions about risk reach the proper level. Sometimes the things come because we're doing something new and people don't know how to do it. And when that happens, it has to be raised to the level that everybody who has something important to contribute about what the risks are needs to be in that conversation. And on to more fun things, where transportation. So we are taking steps to improve the options for transportation to our site. We now have parking at Lawrence Hall of Science, and in Old Town we're starting and managing the construction parking so that we can have them off-site. We've also invested quite a bit in improved bus service, and we're actually getting more ridership than we have had. We'll be rolling out an improved ride-sharing option soon using a ride-sharing app, a little more modern than what we've had. So this is an ongoing campaign. We're putting a lot of effort into it, and I'm sure we'll be getting a lot of feedback from you about how it's going. So that's pretty much what I want to talk about, but I want to end with this. At every point since I first came here and talked to people here, I have been impressed by how committed they are to our shared mission of science, discovery science and science for the nation. And mostly I just want to say what a privilege it is to be working for all of you. That is to help carry your message forward to the DOE and to the federal government. Thank you for your commitment to our mission. Thank you. So, we have some questions.
Mike,
Yeah.
Mike, I have one from the online audience.
Yeah.
We have about 400 people watching.
Yeah.
Let's see, how are we doing with diversity, and what do we expect to see in the next few years?
Yeah, that's a good question. And people say, I think on the one hand, the feedback I've gotten on our idea initiatives, on the one hand, for the most part, generally, we're glad the laboratory is doing this in such an active way. But their other part is, well, what do you expect to see happen and when? And I think we have to face the fact that the issues of diversity, equity, and accountability, and inclusion and accountability are not just of this laboratory, but of our whole culture and society. And we're part of that. And so what are the goals? The goals are that we would have a better environment here than perhaps than outside the laboratory, or in other, and to be a leading institution in that. It's not going to fix all problems at once, but it's actually to be a leader in it. And I will say the other thing is already we've seen it gives us competitive advantage in hiring people to the lab, because people come and they look and see, how are you doing on this? gee, that's a place I would like to work. And we've already seen the effect of that. But this is a launch. It's going to be just as with safety, it's something that we will have to stay with for continuously.
Mike, you mentioned that Berkeley Lab has the largest postdoc contribution among the national labs. I wanted to touch on the students and our relationship to UC Berkeley.
Yeah. And so what I meant that effectively, if you take the fraction of our laboratory employees that are postdocs is higher here. I mean, they're postdoc numbers that are as large for even larger laboratories. That's the way we do our work. But it's also true that we have a large number of, we have 250 graduate students and quite a few undergraduate students work here. And of course, we have all the graduate students who are not on our under our employee, but actually work here. One of the issues of the national laboratories have been great in being able to do big things like accelerators. One of the problems, though, as you know, is that when accelerators moved from universities to laboratories a generation ago, they pulled accelerators out of universities, and the universities were not developing the manpower needed in some of these crucial accelerator roles. So the challenge is always the laboratories can be isolated from the graduate education. Because after all, most of the national laboratories were put in places were intended to be secret originally, in Oak Ridge and Hannaford and Los Alamos. We are the only, well, we're certainly the only laboratory that's as closely tied to a university as we are here, and one of a few that have a very close connection with the university. So this operating at the boundary between the university and laboratory is part of our mission, and it's part of our postdocs. Our students go on to be at laboratories all over the country because they realize what you can do at a laboratory here, and they go on to those careers elsewhere, and that's part of what we provide. So it's very important to us. And I did say to the postdocs, I think we probably have, for a laboratory this size, I think we have the best group of postdocs of anywhere. And the only ones, certainly in non-medical institutions, I could defend that, and we can have an argument with medical institutions.
Mike, what is the lab's plan for converting productive postdocs to research scientists?
Yeah, and that's very closely connected to this. We have, our postdocs are, as they are in most of the academic community, our short-term positions are a combination of both doing science and training for career positions, and we keep them at that. And some fraction of those will end up with career jobs here. I think the numbers are we have those numbers. I think it's not something like 15% or something like that. But we also, our postdocs are go on to university jobs, laboratory jobs, startups, and industry positions, and are quite successful as that. So we're mostly interested in making sure that postdocs here have the development they need to compete well for jobs everywhere, including here. We still have to run for all our career jobs here, to run national and international searches in which our postdocs can compete. But our job should be based on not how many postdocs we keep here, but how well our postdocs do here and everywhere else. And I think we're actually doing pretty well at that. We'll be welcoming Chris Fall, who's the head of the Office of Science here today. So if you see him walking around, say hello. We'll be taking him around showing what we're doing here. All I can say is that, again, I'm really thrilled at the progress we're making on so many fronts. And thank you for your commitment to our shared mission. And let's keep going. Thank you.